I was going to start this video by saying how I'm not even going to mention the Crystal Palace game, how it's done, it's over, and the next 10 days is just solely about preparing for the big one, not getting any injuries at Villa Park on Friday night, and discussing whether we might actually have the minerals to lift the trophy and see us all at an open-top bus parade along the Tottenham High Road in a couple of weeks' time. However, I do feel like we're going to have to mention that game a little bit and the league form before we get into all of the Europa League stuff. I'm sure some of you will have seen my post-match reaction after the Crystal Palace game. I labelled it as the worst performance I'd ever seen from a Tottenham Hotspur side. I think maybe with, nearly 48 hours time to think about it, maybe that was a little harsh. But in reality, this is just a strange situation that Tottenham find them in. And look, I can't be hypocritical because, as you all know, those of you who watch me regularly, I called back in February, probably after that Ipswich game where we beat Ipswich to make sure pretty much we knew we wouldn't go down. I called for us to wrap our best players in cotton wool. And to be fair to Ange Postecoglou, he has done that. Mickey van der Ven and Romero, I think, only started together maybe in the Chelsea game. And I do think it would now be madness for them to have played, for instance, against Crystal Palace. Or for Solanke to have played, or even Richarlison, based on the amount of injuries he's had and the importance that he's shown to us in those semi-final games against Bodo Glimt. So I guess Ange has done the right thing, but the thing that really surprises me is just how poor the players who come in for those players have been, and how seemingly demotivated. And actually, it makes me worried about this Villa Park game on Friday. Incidentally, I will be doing a watch along for that game against Aston Villa on Friday night on this channel, on my channel. So do keep an eye out for that. Let's all watch that together. I mean, it's going to be a bit of a strange one, isn't it? A bit of a hate watch because Villa are actually, really motivated going for Champions League spot. And even those players who Ange will pick on Friday night will be just thinking about the following week. Even if the best that they can hope for, a lot of them will be to potentially come on off the bench. Sorry, but the Palace game in particular. Just when Crystal Palace have an FA Cup final before Spurs have their Europa League final, they really showed how much they wanted to prove to their manager that they should be playing at Wembley. And whereas Spurs are just so paranoid now because of the injuries they've had all season, that Ange is just like, nope, we can't even take a risk on trying to get momentum because we just get injuries all the time. And it's true. Like, in the last week alone, Kulusevski, Maddison, Bergvall, all gone down. Potentially our entire midfield. Gone down injured. Kulusevski, Ange is saying it's a knock. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But it looked like it was a bit of a knee issue, which is the same with Madders. And the reality is that just Ange Postecoglou, I'm sorry, he cannot keep his players fit. It's not all down to him, but the reality is there's been a lack of rotation all season, or at the beginning of the season, and an inability to deal with 2 games a week. And it goes back to that thing that we used to say when Antonio Conte was coming in. Like, Conte is the master of dealing with it when there's 1 game a week. Well, yes, we got fewer injuries last season when we only had to play 1 game a week under Ange Postecoglou, but we still got a lot of injuries. The only time at the beginning last season where we didn't have injuries was the first 10 games when we were brilliant and other managers hadn't really worked it out how to play against us yet. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but the thing I think that will really cause the end of Ange Postecoglou's tenure as manager of Spurs will be that over the 2 years that he has been the manager, or the near 2 years, he has not been able to get the players on the park to play the style of football that he insists on playing. And that is what I think, no matter what happens a week on Thursday, in a Europa League final, we cannot take credit away from Ange Postecoglou for getting us to a Europa League final. It should not be understated. He's done a great job. People will look at it and say, oh, it was only Bodo Glimt in the semi-finals. Yeah, but it was Eintracht Frankfurt in the quarterfinals, away in the second leg, winning that game against a team who are in much better form and who have won the Europa League in the last few seasons. So it cannot be understated what a great job he's done, but it is clear to me, and by no means this is the first time I've said it, it is absolutely clear that Ange Postecoglou trains his players too hard and does not rotate cleverly enough over the course of a season, or in our case 2 seasons, to make sure that those players get enough rest and do not put their muscles and their joints under undue stress. And look, I'm desperate not to be negative in this kind of week and a half. This week and a half before the final should be the best time ever, but unfortunately that Crystal Palace performance and result, but the result should have been about 6-0. It took away, unfortunately, it shouldn't, but it took away some of those positive feelings that came from the excellent 2-legged performance against Bodo Glimt. And yes, I get it, people will be screaming at me. Oh, but, no Mickey van der Ven, no Romero, no Solanke. And it's true. But momentum does make a difference in football. And you only have to look at the team we were playing, Crystal Palace, to see how much desire they showed, how they wanted to work on their patterns. And I said it during the watch-along, I probably said it in my post-match review, I thought it was a great audition for Oliver Glasner if he fancies potentially being the Spurs boss. He's actually down at 16-1 in the odds on being Spurs boss next season. The favourite to be Tottenham boss next season is Ange Postecoglou, 2-1, followed by Maurizio Pochettino, and then the likely suspects, Marco Silva, Iraola, Xavi's on the list as well. Let me know in the comments below, who on that list would you want? And maybe also tell me who you want, but also who is potentially realistic. Anyway, there's been some kind of Europa League interviews and press conferences being done. I guess that's the reality when you're in a European final with a couple of weeks to go. The interest really ramps up. Ange was asked about having the chance to write his name in Tottenham history by winning a trophy. He said, "The photos I see up on the walls of the stadium are of Bill Nicholson and the 1984 UEFA Cup winning team. Now it's about, can we get this group on the wall?" And listen, I agree with him. If he wins that trophy, if he finds a way past Manchester United, come hell or high water, we will look back on Ange Postecoglou the same way we look at Keith Birkinshaw. Keith Birkinshaw won it in 1984 for Spurs. He then left straight afterwards. He actually, I think, only got Spurs to 16th place in the old First Division that season. So it'll be a very similar situation. And of course, there'll be people, if Ange were to leave as the UEFA Cup winner, as the Europa League winner, saying, well, he should stay. And I dare say if it happens that night and during the open top bus parade and over the course of the European hangover that we'll have and the positive feelings, there will be some calls for Ange Postecoglou to stay. But that's what brings me back to what I was saying. Can we trust that he'll be able to get the first team playing on the pitch together? I don't know. Because the evidence suggests that he doesn't. And for some reason, I know he came out earlier this season saying, there's been a thorough investigation into the medical team and stuff. But I think it's probably the coaching as much as anything. It's just too intense. I don't know. Postecoglou was asked about Kulusevski. He said he should be okay. Having just talked to him after, the medical team are not too concerned about him. It was just a knock. And this was something I heard talked about on one of the other podcasts this week. Maybe the Extra Inch. Either the Extra Inch or the View from the Lane or the Tottenham Way. Or the Fighting Cock. They're the big podcasts that I listen to. Really good. If you don't listen to them, make sure you do. But I think it was probably the Extra Inch, and talking about how, they felt it was maybe that Postecoglou and the medical team had spoken to Kulusevski after he came off, and he said, "Oh, it's just a knock." But he would say that, wouldn't he? Just being a bit cynical, he would say that. He'd be desperate, absolutely desperate to play in a Europa League final, and they've got to make sure that he goes for a scan, because we cannot have any passengers in that final, by which I mean any players who are not 100% fit and able to give 110% work rate, like they did, to be fair, in the quarters and the semi-finals. And if Kulusevski has any knock about him, I'm afraid to say we have to not play him. And it was a bit of a worry, I have to say, that against Crystal Palace we had at times Pat Matassar playing in the 10 position, the 8-10 position. That is not for him. I would, I know it's kind of mad to say it, but I'd feel like the only creativity we'd have left possibly to bring in as a 10, 8-10 is Mikey Moore. Bring him in for the final. He could make a huge name for himself. And Ange also tried Odebear at times in that in that Crystal Palace game in the 8-10 role. He looked totally physically out-muscled, and he was dominated, and he barely got on the ball. And I've got high hopes for Odebear, but there just seems to be a problem with all of these players who are in the, what I'd call the B team or the reserve team at the moment. None of them really able to get themselves up to speed. Ange was asked about squad depth. He said, "I just think we haven't been able to cope with what's been presented to us this year. A lot of that is because of the injury situation we had, particularly earlier in the year. Just frustrates me a little bit when Ange uses the injuries as excuses and doesn't really take any responsibility for it, because you know who else is doing that at the moment? The manager of them lot down the road, and he's being memed for it. He is literally saying that the reason they didn't win the league is because of injuries, and it's not that. Everybody gets injuries. He's saying, oh, Liverpool were lucky not to get injuries. Sure, but you've got to find a way around it. You've got to find ways around it, and I'm sorry, but I think Ange should be taking more responsibility. I would love it if Ange had come out at any point and just said, look, I've got to look at myself. I've got to look at the intensity of which I train these boys and insist that they play on the pitch all the time, never stopping, never taking any breathers. And that's something that I think he has learned, because we're definitely not doing that level of intensity in the Europa League anymore. You saw it in the Bodo Glimt second leg. We were time wasting from the first minute of the second leg, and I was there for it with a 2-goal lead. Great, but sometimes you can do that in the Premier League as well. You have to, I've said it loads of times, but you have to earn the right to play your football. And in the Premier League, if you get the first goal and then you slow things down a bit and you find ways to hit on transitions and make the opposition team play in different ways, then that is often what allows you to get the second goal, and then you can play your football. When you're 2-0 up and the other team, their desire is and motivation has gone through the floor. So I feel like Ange would have done better for himself if he'd kind of practiced what he preached a bit more, saying, he's always said, I've got a thick skin, I don't care what other people say about me. Well, then come out and take some responsibility for the injury situation, because, yes, we've had bad injuries. Of course we have. And now we're getting them again, but it's cannot be coincidence over this 2-year period. He went on to say, it's not just about getting players back. I've had to manage guys like Mickey, Romero and Destiny. There is every possibility they could have played more than they've played, but we've had to manage it and we haven't been able to cope with it. We've got a lot of young players in the squad who we've exposed to a lot of football, and fair to say a few of them are looking tired, I think because we're into our 60th or 61st game and because of the injury situation we had. We've paid a price for that in the league, so that is the story as it's been told. Okay, I will agree with him on that. 61 games is a lot, but last season I think we only played 40 games. 41 at a push. And they were getting injured then as well. And they were poor at the back end of last season as well. So I'll agree with him. They played a lot of games, and a lot of those young players, the likes of Archie Gray, for instance, who I'm afraid, and I said it in my post-match, I don't like saying this because he's just a kid, but he looked like a fish out of water against Crystal Palace. Couldn't get near it. And yeah, he's played a lot of games, but so maybe he is tired. But also, I would just say, based on what I've seen, I think he is a very, very excellent centre-back for the future. But at the moment, at Premier League level, and he's young and he'll grow, but he hasn't shown me enough in midfield for me to think that will be where his future lies. Ange was asked about the extremes of reaching a final and the league form. He said, yes, look, and I get it, people are banging the drum about this record with defeats. I am. 20 defeats, could end up being 22 defeats. Do any of you see us getting a result at Villa Park on Friday? No. I worry more that we might get absolutely pulverised on Friday. And then Brighton at home in the last game of the season. Listen, that will be one of two things, won't it? It will either be he can play the first team because we've won the Europa League the previous Wednesday, but they'll probably be hungover to fuck. Or we've been beaten in that Europa League final, and it would probably be, I'm afraid, it would probably be toxic in that stadium for that Brighton game. Do you think people are not going to boo after finishing 17th? Anyway, let's see what happens. Ange goes on to say, but if people don't see there's a correlation between the two, by which he means injuries and defeats, I'm not going to sit here, and it's not exactly Pythagoras' theorem. It's quite simple to understand we would have had much better results if we didn't have to navigate this. One thing I will say in his credit when saying that is the The win rate when Romero, Vicario and Van de Ven have all played together, I think, from a stat I saw, is up at 75%. So there is some truth to it, for sure. But got to find ways in future of getting all those players on the pitch. And maybe there won't be a future in that, because more reports this morning that now that Real Madrid have decided and officially appointed Xavi Alonso as manager from Leverkusen next season, that one of Alonso's first signings that he wants to make is Christian Romero. So they'll be fighting with Atletico Madrid for him, which I think will be good for Spurs in a way, because that will drive up the price a little bit. Anyway, Ange goes on to say, so either you understand or you don't and beat us over the head. I get it. I'm not happy with the way we performed against Crystal Palace, so that's what I look at. I think we could have performed better, and irrespective of the result, you can still lose a game of football and our performance level wasn't anywhere near where it should be. That's my responsibility to address. Okay, so he's taken some responsibility there, but I'd like him to talk more about it. What can he do to get those players playing better? What can he do to... I'd like him to come out and say what he's going to do next season. I know he can't because he fears for his job in a way, but just say, listen, if I'm the manager here next season, this is what I'm going to do to make sure I get more of my first team players on the pitch week in, week out. And this is what I'm going to do to make sure we do not finish 16th or 17th, and it will be 17th, next season. Because it is hard to turn around momentum in football. And if we got off to a bad start next season, having finished 17th, I'll tell you what, with a young squad, and Ange just talked about it, how, we are basically going through the painful rebuild, but with a young squad who've lost so many games, if it goes into the start of next season as well, you would worry, wouldn't you? You would seriously worry. Ange was asked on whether the players know that there are 8 or 9 set players likely to play in the final. He said, that's the problem, because how do you know? Like, we lost Lucas the day before a game. You've got to be ready for your opportunity. They may think that this team's already set, but if there's nothing else we've learnt this year, it's that nothing goes to plan. So I'm not thinking about the starting lineup now for the final, because we've still got another game and 10 days to navigate. So if there's that attitude in there, then it's the wrong attitude, because you're missing an opportunity. Like I said, when Lucas went down, we had to throw Biss in there. So you have to be ready. And fair play to Bissouma. Less so against Crystal Palace, but in those 2 semi-finals where he was thrown in, he did really well. He did really, really well. Ange Postecoglou was asked about Sonny. He said, in terms of his fitness, he's progressing well. One thing I will say, he did look... he kind of looked sharp in his running, I would say, when he played against Crystal Palace. He was obviously rusty trying to get the ball out of his feet, which you'd expect because he hadn't played for so long. But he looked a bit quicker to me. I don't know, let me know if you agree. He said, Ange went on to say, he played 25-30 minutes against Palace and we should get him some game time on Friday against Villa as well. I'd start him. If he trains right, though, he'll be in good condition. He's worked hard with the medical team to get back. It was a bit of a funny injury. There was no pre-prescribed length of time to return. It was just how he felt and how he progressed. It was important he got some game time, and hopefully he'll kick on now. Would you pick Sonny for that final to start? I wouldn't. I'd have Richarlison in there. And I'd say to Sonny, sorry, but you're not fit enough, but come and change things off the bench for us. High chance that game, that final, with 2 teams under pressure and desperate not to lose, high chance it goes to extra time. And imagine if you could have those fresh legs of Sonny going into extra time. But let me know in the comments, would you start Heung-min Son in that final against Manchester United? Sonny himself was asked about it. Actually, before I go into this, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please do press like on this video if you haven't already. And if you're not a subscriber to my channel yet, it's daily Tottenham Hotspur news. And as we get close to the transfer window, in the summer, it will be daily transfer news from across the Premier League and beyond, always starting with transfer rumours and talk from Tottenham, of course. So do give the channel a subscribe. Nearly at 15,000 subscribers. So please do help get me there, guys. Okay, Sonny said this, every match is special to me and I value each one the same. But this upcoming game feels like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, something that may never come again. That's why I believe I need to put all my focus into it, prepare my body for it, and give it everything I have. I don't want to have any regrets this time. Especially for the fans who want this even more than I do, I truly want to bring them joy. When I head back to Korea after the season ends, I want to give our Spurs fans and Korean fans the biggest smile I can. That would be the best gift I could give. He said, he went on to say this, which is pretty telling. He said, I've said this for years, but the biggest reason I've stayed at Tottenham is because I want to achieve something others haven't. That's why I'm still here, to complete a puzzle. You need every piece, don't you? I feel like we've almost put all the pieces together, but we've always been missing that one final crucial piece. It feels like I've spent the past 10 years searching for it, and I really hope that this time we can finally complete the puzzle. Listen, there's nothing I'd want more than Sonny to be lifting that trophy. I think probably everyone other than maybe Man United fans, Arsenal fans, maybe Chelsea fans at a push, they would love to see it too. I do think Tottenham will have a lot of support, kind of more like support in the ether for that match. I think everybody wants Man United to continue being the meme club, and if it was against anyone other than Man United, I think everyone would want to be laughing at Spurs, but I think they actually would like Spurs to do it. And I hope that we can approach the game, I've said it before, but I hope we can approach the game with the physicality that Newcastle approached the Carabao Cup final against Liverpool. No one was giving them a shot in that game, but they physically dominated Liverpool that game. And I would like to see Tottenham with Romero and Van der Ven and Solanke down the spine, Bentancur as well, show some real physicality. Disciplined physicality, of course, but show Man United from the start of that game that they are in a proper match and that we are hungrier for it than they are. Sonny was asked whether he got in touch with Harry Kane after he won the Bundesliga. He said, I texted him and we had a video call. He looked really happy, and seeing that made me so happy too. He's a very close friend and a teammate with whom I achieved so many things, so it felt like seeing a family member succeed. With that kind of positive energy and Harry Kane supporting us, I hope Spurs can also achieve great things. I'd like to see Harry Kane at the game. I hope Spurs offer him a ticket. Maybe Eric Dyer too. Some of those old players in the from the Pochettino era in the crowd. I'd love to see that. Ange was asked about Man United's form. You've probably seen this, but he said, no, I said before, I couldn't care less about Man United. They have their own journey. It's about us and what we're trying to create here. It's too easy to accept a performance that is not up to the level because of other factors. I think irrespective of other factors, you should still be able to perform at a certain level, and we didn't reach that level against Palace. That's disappointing. One thing I do want to say that is a positive about having Ange is that he's won finals. You know, when we went to that Champions League final, Poch had not won any finals as a manager. Ange has. He knows how to get teams over the line. And I just hope that we're able to put out the team we need to, and that we're able to, like I said, perform with that physicality to show Manchester United that they are in for a rough ride. And all the messaging coming out of Manchester United from Amorim, from the fans, it's not that they don't care, but they're saying, oh, it's not the be-all and end-all. It would be kind of a rung up the ladder. Whereas for Spurs, this is the be-all and end-all. And I really hope that that kind of level of desire and motivation transcends itself onto the pitch as well. Because like I've been saying for months, these little percentage points, marginal gains, they make all the difference. And I just hope that that kind of stuff can push us over the line. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching and listening to today's episode. Please, like I said, do give this video a like. Please press subscribe on the channel. In the run-up to, what is it? It's a week tomorrow now. Also, get in the comments, guys, and let me know about your stories, about how you're getting to Bilbao, how much money you're spending. Like, the cost of it all is completely ridiculous. But let me know in the comments. Let's talk about all that stuff. And, of course, most importantly, come on, you Spurs.